Hi, I'm Kat Kalashian for Live and Invest Overseas, and today we are talking Mexico. 5 things you need to know if you're considering a move to Mexico. So first of all, let's give a little introduction. Pretty sure everybody watching these videos is going to know a good bit about Mexico, but did you know that it is home to more US expats than any other country, with about 1.6 million Americans, not including Canadians even, who are living in Mexico? If you are thinking that Mexico might be right for you, there are some things that you should know before you get started. First, let's again introduce ourselves a little bit. Why Mexico? Why would anybody be thinking of moving here, retiring here? Well, first of all, relocating south of the border is a really easy choice for many Americans, since Mexico is a really easy country to reach, either by plane or by car. It's one of the few international havens that you can actually pack up and drive to, which is quite rare in the world. For Americans at least. And it's also familiar with a lot of the same franchises and brands that you would be used to back home. You won't need to go without your favorite brand of cereal or settle for a local alternative here. Mexico has all the same stuff. Cost of living is generally lower in Mexico than it is in the US, and English is fairly well spoken by locals across the country in a general way, especially in places that are very popular with tourists or foreigners. And more importantly, Mexico is an all-around appealing place to live. So if you've ever traveled south of the border, you probably know what I'm talking about. This is a beautiful land of ancient history with a rich modern culture and world-renowned cuisine that, let's be frank, we've adopted in America and we love. It's got beautiful landscapes. It's got beautiful beaches. It's got Pacific. It's got Caribbean. Its weather is warm year-round unless you don't want it to be. And then you go up to the mountains and you enjoy some lower humidity and cooler temperatures. And while it might be really easy to picture a new life in Mexico, especially if you're there in a resort on vacation, this country also does have its quirks. As familiar as it is, it does have some different things that you'll want to get to know before deciding to make a move here. So here are 5 things to know before you move to Mexico. Number 1. Mexico is massive. It is most famous for its beach resorts, but it is such a huge country, the 13th biggest country in the world, with a population of over 130 million people, which means there's a huge amount of diversity here. And in a country this size, it means that the landscapes, the biomes, the climates, the creatures, the cultures, the cuisine, and pretty much everything else is going to change every couple 100 miles or so. So for prospective expats, this translates to a wide range of lifestyle options, from Spanish colonial ambiance in colorful highland cities like San Miguel de Allende, to buzzing metropolises like Mexico City, to Wild West style desert surroundings like Durango. And the biggest mistake you can make coming into a move or any kind of interaction with Mexico is assuming that it is a homogenous country, or that what you may have already experienced in one corner is going to be universal to the whole country. What you experience on vacation is always going to be different from what you experience there as a resident, or as even a part-time snowbird, as we call them, living there for a few months a year. So let's put this into, again, a perspective that Americans can get used to or can understand easily. So the way of life in Maine is pretty starkly different from that of Mississippi, right? That is a truism that you need to take with you outside of the US as well. All of Mexico is not the same. All of Belize is not the same. All of France is not the same. We can be very easily duped into thinking that the place we go for a vacation or the really popular tourist spot is all that a country has to offer. And that's doing yourself, as well as the country itself, a huge disservice, because you're discounting a huge part of what you could be enjoying there. It's also worth bearing the country size in mind when it comes to safety concerns, which is something we often get questions about for Mexico. Naturally, in Mexico, as anywhere in the world, bad things can and do happen, but they are typically, as anywhere in the world, confined to certain areas. So it's very difficult, obviously, to make generalizations about any aspect of life or safety or crime in Mexico. But for what it's worth, the US State Department issues travel advisories usually by country, but in Mexico, it actually makes an exception, and it does it by state as opposed to for the entire country, because it realizes you can't blanket a single recommendation for a country this huge. So a really good approach, if this is a concern for you, wherever you might be thinking about spending time in Mexico, is to speak to locals, to speak to expats, get a feel for how secure they are in their day-to-day lives in whichever part of the country you are considering a move to. So number 2, life can be much less expensive here, and I don't think this should come as a shock to anyone. Most goods and services cost less in Mexico than they do in the US, including accommodation, healthcare, gas, groceries, cell phone plans, restaurant meals, and on and on and on. Moving here is one of the best opportunities to slash your daily, monthly expenses. And frankly, that's a good reason to move a lot of places in the world. Even in France, you could live in places where you'll spend less money than you would back home. The exchange rate between the US dollar and the Mexican peso also works quite often in your favor. The strength of the dollar has been a little bit less reliable lately, a little bit more uppity downity, but generally speaking, the US dollar is worth several Mexican pesos. So currently, you could round the exchange rate up for the past few months to say it's about 20 pesos to the dollar, and it feels like everything is half price when you go shopping at that rate, right? So for prospective property owners, taxes, utilities, the water, the electricity, garbage, everything are much lower than in the US, relatively speaking, of course. And exact tax rates are also going to vary from state to state, as so much does, but generally they're going to fall between 0.05% and 1.2%. So a major drop in costs, even if you're just talking about things like real estate taxes. One of my good friends actually owns 2 properties right now. He's owned many over the course of his life in many countries. But right now, the 2 that we're thinking about are one in Mazatlan, Mexico, and the other in California. They're both very comparable units. They are both new build apartments. They have ocean views, and they're pretty much a similar size. He pays $87 per year in property tax for his Mazatlan apartment, which it couldn't be better placed. It's right downtown, right on the seafront, steps to the historic district, steps to the Lido, the boardwalk of the city. Really primo spot that he's in. And property tax for his California apartment is about 80 times that $87 a year number that I mentioned. So the low overhead for cost of property ownership can also make Mexico a really attractive choice for property investors, whether it's, a home you're looking to use for yourself or for just a rental property. This is a really attractive market, whether you're looking for second homes or rental opportunity. Number 3, Amazon and Uber are available in Mexico. And this might sound like an odd one, but service providers have become a staple of our modern lives. They've become part of your everyday life in the United States. And all of those things that you expect from your phone and your apps in the United States, you can pretty much count on them all in Mexico as well, which again is not the case everywhere else in the world. So you can't take this for granted. If you go to Belize, if you go to Peru, if you go to France, Spain, Italy, wherever it is you're looking to go, things are going to be very localized, probably more than you might imagine outside of your home country. So US expats in Mexico report great services from Amazon.mx, which is the local version of Amazon. It is convenient, it's reliable. In some cases, the delivery drivers will even go the extra mile and call you to let you know that they're going to be there in a minute or that they're outside. Uber is available in many of the big Mexican cities, but not all of them. So again, this isn't something you can just take for granted, but if you're going to a city, you can pretty much count on it. And where it is available, certain routes might be restricted, so keep that in mind. So for example, in Mazatlan, which does have Uber, you cannot get an Uber pickup or drop off to the international airport there. One of these legality things. The taxi unions got up in arms and said, protect our airport fare fees. So do a bit of research about what is currently possible in the city that you're considering if you're really attached to one of your apps. But if not, rest assured, there's always a local alternative. So for Uber, there's always taxis that are very affordable, safe, reliable. Streaming services like Amazon Prime, Netflix, these are all also available in Mexico. Again, not something you can always count on. And so before I go on to the final 2 points, please let me share a quick invitation with you. In a couple of weeks, we'll be preparing a unique group of experts, expats, and retirees who are currently living in Mexico, including my friend who I mentioned earlier with the apartment in Mexico and the apartment in California. This will be during our upcoming Live and Invest in Mexico virtual conference, and you'll hear from all of these guys that we've known for decades at this point. This is a one-of-a-kind online event that will show you how to live or retire in Mexico or just invest here successfully with as few mistakes as possible. Join these professionals who work here, live here, expats who have been here, gone through all the same things you're going to go through, and we will reveal everything that you need to consider a new life in Mexico all of the best options within it as your new home under the sun. You'll get the inside story on gaining residency, getting healthcare, finding friends, figuring out taxes, making the actual physical move, having fun, and finding a home. Can't forget the last bit, having fun. It's not all about the administration. We've condensed what usually takes months or more of effort into just a single action-packed day, all from the comfort of your home computer or mobile device. So click that link on screen to find out more. All right, let's go on to item number 4, things you need to know before you make a move or think about making a move to Mexico. Big box stores and familiar brands are here. I have mentioned this, but it bears worth repeating in some more detail. Some cities and towns in Mexico have big box stores like Walmart, Sam's Club, Costco, AutoZone, the Home Depot. If shopping at these kind of superstores is part of your routine, their availability here in Mexico can help ease that transition into your new life. Other shopping options will exist, obviously, including local shops and traditional markets that in many cases have been operating for decades, if not centuries, and will save a whole lot of money on those local items that you can source right there. Regardless of where you shop, you'll find that many of your preferred brands from back home are available here in Mexico, and in fact, they may be made in Mexico. Everything from your Ford car to your Oreo cookies to your Coca-Cola may have been made in a factory in Mexico. So that means obviously they're going to be cheaper here than they would be in the US because they didn't have to cross a border. So this means you don't need to keep a shopping list of those items that you need to bring back in a suitcase every time you go home, which is something I do living here in Europe every time I go home. Number 5, financial thresholds for residency have gone way up and it's terrible. Gaining residency in Mexico is still feasible, but the financial thresholds that you need to meet to qualify for residency have increased significantly since early 2025. For example, to qualify for temporary residency using your monthly income, you'll need to show that you earn at least 300 times the minimum daily wage in Mexico. So for 2025, that minimum wage is 278.80 Mexican pesos, which is about $15 at today's rate. The amounts will vary, of course, according to the exchange rate on any given day. And they're also different, oddly, from consulate to consulate. So it's a little strange. If you look at the LA consulate website, it might give you a different number for income requirement than you might get in West Virginia. So we will go through what you should expect. You can pretty much expect the following. In temporary residency would be about $4,000 per month. Via savings, it would be about $70,000 in savings. For permanent residency, it would be about $7,000 a month. And to prove that via savings instead of through income, it would be $279,000. Again, these figures will vary according to consulate and exchange rates. However, despite these price hikes, Mexico offers a few specific benefits when it comes to residency. And I just want to put it out there, you don't need that much money to live in any place in Mexico. I mean, you could have, of course, spend that much money, but it doesn't cost $7,000 a month to live anywhere in Mexico. It doesn't cost $4,000 a month to live anywhere in Mexico. There are probably places you could live on less than $1,000 a month in Mexico. But this is what the government needs you to prove before they'll let you in the door. So keep that in mind. There's a little bit of a discrepancy there. And so let's get back to those benefits. First, if you do have a residency visa in Mexico, you can use your savings, as I just went through, instead of your income, which would be limited to your Social Security, your pension, etc. And most countries only accept income. So being able to show your savings as proof is a bit of a benefit here in Mexico. Second, Mexico does allow you to jump straight to permanent residency if you can meet the higher financial threshold. So that means bypassing temporary residency, means bypassing several renewals, it means bypassing a lot of administration, and it just speeds up the whole process and is a lot less of a headache for you. You wouldn't need to renew it as opposed to your temporary that you need to renew every year. Third, Mexico does not stipulate a physical presence requirement. So what this means is that most countries in the world will require you to spend a certain amount of time in a country as a resident. So in some cases, this could be 6 months per year. In some cases, it's 2 weeks every 2 years. It does vary quite a bit from country to country, but Mexico has no such requirement. So it's a great choice for somebody looking for a backup residency, but not necessarily looking to relocate, somebody who's maybe looking to spend just a few or a couple months a year, leaving their options open and able to be really flexible and move around as they want to. But always having that back pocket option of being able to head over to Mexico whenever they want to. There you have it. 5 things everybody needs to know before thinking about a move to Mexico. For more information from Live and Invest Overseas on moving to Mexico, whether it's for retirement or as a digital nomad, or if you're not thinking of moving there at all, you just want to invest, check out our resources here at that link. And as always, like and subscribe for more videos like this every week from Live and Invest Overseas. Happy trails.